that they enjoy while doing all of that. And that's very, very significant. And therefore, instead of very hardened writing of scripts in these languages, if you allow children to listen to stories and tell stories and play games, toys, and the edutech companies about whom we were all discussing, I think they have a great role to play in terms of making use of augmented reality, virtual reality. The real learning takes place from gamification, and therefore how we can develop those tools which can create all variety of knowledge that is to be gained or the information to be given to the child in the form of these exciting games. And we are talking about the last couple of years of this pandemic in which all the classes began online and we missed meeting in person, face to face, and that's why there has been a challenge in terms of both problems of psychological effects on the children, or learning is not as effective as it used to be in the normal classroom. This is what is being discussed all the time. But look back, even in a classroom, if the teacher is not talking about interaction with the children, is not giving excellent examples, the classes are boring even in the physical mode. And therefore, it is not whether it is in the face-to-face mode, but using technology. But what is more important is how do you bring in that aspiration of the child to be lifted? How do you make the child understand the difficult subject through a lot of animation, lot of simulation, by which a first-hand experiential learning begins, whether it is in the face-to-face mode or in the online mode. And that is very significant and important as far as the national education policy is concerned. It talks about holistic education, education which is based on Indian knowledge systems, Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, based on innovation. I think these words sound very, very high, but practically bringing them to the schools, it's not very easy. There is a challenge. And the most important challenge that we need to address is how do we empower our teachers first? Because teachers themselves were also taught in the same way, old ways, and therefore, how do we train our teachers? Again, using technology wherever possible, otherwise in the face-to-face mode. We need to change the attitude of the teachers, make them great listeners rather than only deliverers. And this is a big problem with, as you go higher up in the hierarchy, from the teacher to the principal to the HOD to the principal or the vice chancellors or to the chairman of AICTE, we all have a very less attitude of listening, others' ideas. And the first and foremost important thing for the teacher is to give ears to the kid, because it has some fascinating idea. And if it is curved at that moment, it will never again try to open up and then say it. And that's what happens at home. Many times I have seen parents snubbing the children, first padhai karo, uske baad dekha jayega. And when some idea comes up in a college or university also, to our students we say that first complete your degree, then we will see whether you can become a startup man or an entrepreneur. And therefore, this whole philosophy of the way education is important needs to be changed right from school. And that's why the foundational years become important. And we have so much in our country in the past. And we need to therefore understand our Indian knowledge systems. And we must be proud of that, but we should not stop at that. We should continue further development of the old knowledge that exists. You go to some of the tribal states, I have seen in Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, some of the plants and the weeds from out of which some of the excellent medicine can be prepared. We are not aware that knowledge is getting lost, and there, how do we bring that to the fore? Whether it is physics, mathematics or chemistry, the origin of all these sciences is from Bharat Varsha, not from outside. It certainly got further developed, but how do we give this knowledge to our young students that you have a rich heritage, be proud of it, but don't stop at it, continue your inquisitive mind, ask questions, and our teachers must allow students to ask questions. And this is another problem. One is listening, and the second is we don't allow students to ask questions. Many times teachers don't allow for two reasons. One reason is they don't know the answer, and that's why they don't want the question to be asked. The second reason is they're all in the speed or whatever acceleration mode to complete the syllabus. What is required to be done is to unearth the syllabus, to unearth the curriculum. Let the child explore. That is the spirit with which we have to move forward. And this training for teachers is going to be very, very significant. And our present, whatever B.Ed education, which is for 2 years after graduation, is not good enough. And that's why in the National Education Policy, a 4-year integrated teacher training program or degree program is talked about. You learn your own subject. Maybe you will learn economics, you learn philosophy, you learn engineering, you learn science, whatever it is. Along with that, the pedagogical aspects are also to be delivered throughout 4 years. Thereby, we will create excellent teachers. And this is very, very important. Although not relevant to the school education, I would like to reflect on what we did for higher education in AICTE for certification of teachers, which does not exist anywhere in the world. For higher education, to teach in a commerce college or an arts college or a science college or an engineering or a medical or a law college, you need master's degrees or PhDs to get promotions. But the very essence of teaching learning process, which is a strong interaction between guru and shishya, the student and the teacher, which is itself missing. And that's why the classes are all boring. A teacher comes and delivers 50-minute or 60-minute lecture and then goes away. Some of the students who are interested, they will learn something. Others, they will keep watching their WhatsApp messages. And then nothing goes inside. And therefore, whether it is online or face-to-face, the most important thing, again, coming back is how do we make our students interact in the class, give them opportunity to do that. And that comes from another area, that is the examinations, the testing, the evaluation. And unless the evaluation system changes, teaching learning process also will not change. Evaluation should be based on not necessarily the rote learning, which is what we do today, right from KG to PG examinations, if you look at, they're all based on rote learning. There are some topics on which there is a chapter, students mug it up, and then they are in a position to memorize, reproduce, get excellent marks. And if you ask them, where is it applied, how is it applied, why is it applied, it's all blank. And therefore, unless we start asking probing questions where application of the information which is converted into knowledge, into application, to make use of that knowledge is also part of the question papers, our teaching learning processes and our evaluation system will not be effective, and that is what is required to be performed. So we have this 8-module teacher certification program where curriculum revision is one part. Right from school to high school to college to university, curriculum cannot be stagnant. Curriculum has to be dynamic. It can change probably every year. Maybe some part of that will remain same, but there must be opportunity for the teacher who is teaching a course or a class to change the curriculum every year depending on what has happened. Today, things are changing at such rapid pace that we can't even realize that by the time a student completes that particular year, what was taught becomes irrelevant and something else has come in. And therefore, how we can make students not only to have the latest curriculum, both from school to high school to college and universities on one side, but how lifelong learning and learning to learn become very, very important. And learning to learn can be effective only when we provide opportunities for experiential learning. I was listening to some of the speakers earlier, and many of the school principals and college, in residential schools, as well as government schools and the private schools, they are attempting at different models of engaging students outside the classroom. The last speaker also was saying that children learn more outside the classroom than inside the classroom. In what way they learn? That's all experiential learning. And that again brings us back to at home. If a parent, mother or father says that don't touch the hot flame, your finger will get burnt. Maybe because of your fear that you will beat, it may not do that. But when you are little away, it will go and experiment. It will try itself. And then when the finger really gets burnt, it knows that what parents are saying has some truth in that, and then I must listen to them. And that's why in the early years, this experiential learning is a very, very important thing. Therefore, outside the class, take to the garden which is nearby, or if the school has its own field or garden, very good. Allow them to look at the nature, look at the butterflies, look at the flowers, how nature is so bountiful. It gives a lot of insights about science, about biology, about chemistry, about physics. It starts learning on its own. In the same breath, ask to count the petals, rather than rote learning of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you give these objects and say that you count them, child starts learning. You make that multiplication, addition, subtraction, all through some kind of small games. And I think that becomes very exciting, and the foundations can be laid very, very effectively in terms of teaching learning processes. Then in terms of other activities, we may even take to nearby places of important historical locations, maybe some temple, maybe some church. Maybe we will also take the child to a very exciting industry which is existing, maybe an office of ISRO or DRDO. Whenever students go to such places, they will start getting that aspirational mode, that someday I must also go. Take them to IISc Bangalore or IIT Delhi or wherever you are located nearby. Those institutions with those labs, with that elegant nature of the buildings and the classes, that the way they are held, the child gets that inspiration that someday I must also come here. And there are umpteen examples from very remote tribal areas, students, when they attend to a lecture by some eminent person, an IAS officer or an IFS officer, or from a director of an institution, they get excited about that and then they start doing something good. We have an excellent example of the similar nature. I don't know how many of you are aware of one Mr. Arvind Gupta, who has created huge number of toys. He is located in Pune, in the University of Pune. Started his career in telco. He is an IIT Kanpur graduate. Last 2 years back, he got Padma Shri Award also. But look at that person. Some talk or lecture or seminar which was there in IIT Kanpur long ago, during his student days, he had got excited. But because of family compulsions, he took up a job in telco sometime. And then his passion drove him to leave the job, and full-time, last more than 40 years, he has been working to develop toys, which are all very, very simple, which do not cost not even 5 rupees to 10 rupees. All waste material from home. The slippers, which we throw. If you make that into concave and convex, and you can teach a science of how concave and convexity exists. You can use a rubber tube. You can use a straw, which otherwise we throw it. All of them creating experiment about how lungs function, how much lung power exists. Such experiments are all there on the website of his. And such kind of training is required to be given to our teachers in order to further take it to the respective classes. Last but not the least, the most important thing which we all talk about, both in the education policy as a nation, is the value system. And this value system also can be embedded early years and up to an age of, say, maybe 18, 20. And that's why even if it is late, we at AICTE have started a program called Student Induction Program of 3 weeks duration. And these 3 weeks, there are no classes. But when there are no classes, many children think that they are all happy, enjoying. They do enjoy, of course, but it's more rigorous than the rest of the 4 years of engineering program. They start early in the morning at 5:30, because prior to that, for the last 2 years of 10th, 11th, 12th, they would have been trying for JEE preparation and all closeted in the room, not seen the playground, not seen the sunrise, and we want them to come out and then start experiencing the sunrise and then play actual games, not the computer games. have sweating, and thereby they will realize the importance of the physical fitness. Health is very important. And we all in our philosophy, we talk about not only the body, but mind, the intellect, and then the soul. We have all these four phases. And how do we make them realize that? That is, when they play games, exercise, certainly children will have physical activity, their health will become better. Subsequently, put them to rest for some time, do meditation, yoga, their concentration power increases. मन और बुद्धि ये दोनों को चालना मिलती है. शरीर के बाद मन और बुद्धि को विकास करना बहुत जरूरी है. उसके साथ साथ एवोल्यूशन धीरे धीरे, child will not probably understand whether it is bhakti marga, whether it is karma yogi, or whether it is jnana marga. All of that lead to emancipation of ourselves, and that is emancipation of soul. And that's why body, mind, intellect, they are all important, but the fourth dimension, gradually child start realizing. And these values of honesty, integrity, truthfulness, not doing something, doing something, these can be certainly taught through some kind of a story, books, making students to realize rather than forcing upon them. If you say that you have to be truthful all the time, and the parent themselves on a telephone call, when it comes, tell the child, tell that I'm not at home. So that is the first exercise of truthfulness which they learn. And therefore, I think what is most significant and important is the teachers who are dealing with the classroom, they must themselves be honest, they must be having that high integrity, they must allow questioning, and that's why when the child asks a question, allow that inquisitiveness to be blossomed. And if you don't know the answer, there is nothing that one can worry about. None of us know everything. No, we all learn something, and therefore tell the child that this answer I do not know. I will come back maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I will discuss with other teachers, if not some others, and I will come back and explain to you the phenomenon, why it occurs the way it is. And if this honesty and integrity is shown by the teacher, I will tell you, those students in the class will respect you more than when you are trying to go roundabout and give that answer without knowing it. This is what is very, very significant and important. Therefore, the child's entire psychology gets evolved during the early age, 3 years to 8 years, and that's why this whole system of 5, 3, 3, 4 has to be looked into that perspective. On one side, providing knowledge, information through games, gamification, giving values by first-person approach of following that and then telling it. There is a story about that as well, that there was a mother who went to some yogi and said that, tell my child not to eat jaggery. That time there was no sugar, so jaggery. And he said, come tomorrow, come tomorrow. He kept on postponing. And then some 3, 4 months later, that yogi told the child that don't eat jaggery. The mother was puzzled. I said, you could have told this on the very first day. You didn't do anything other than telling that don't eat. What was that big deal? He said, I was also eating jaggery. With what conviction should I tell that child that you don't eat when I am myself doing it? I had to practice, and I couldn't stop. And it took 4 months for me to stop. And that's why now today I have the courage of telling it. And that word was taken by that child very, very expressly, and then it adopted it. I think this is what is very, very significant and important. Therefore, let us all, educators, think about how do we transform the early child education through all of this. And in the last session, there were a lot of things about skills. They start from the 6th standard onwards. And it brings in 2 things. One is the value of the labor, dignity of labor. How difficult it is, it will be realized by the child. And in the future, even if you are doing a white-collar job, you have respect for a blue-collar job person. And that is very, very important, dignity of labor. And secondly, your motor skills will get developed. You have all variety of hands-on work which will help you in the life, be it in science, commerce, engineering, medicine. I think working by hand, whether it is stitching, whether it is gardening, whether it is agriculture, whether it is in terms of even cutting vegetables, I think all of them have great value, and we'll start respecting that. Thank you very much. Namaskar.